All right. Hello, everybody. It's Sergeant First Class Aaron McKevers here. I am the 2nd Brigade EOA. I frequently am tasked or given the privilege of creating some training content that helps us improve how we operate as a team, how we care for our individuals, how we demonstrate people first, how we get after those corrosive behaviors of suicide, racism, extremism, and sexual harassment, sexual assault. So for today's conversation, I brought in my former battalion commander and Colonel John Casiano. He is going to join me on a conversation where we're going to talk about trust and how trust is important for building high-performing teams. Colonel Casiano, if you'd like to introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about you.
Sure. Sergeant McKevers, thanks very much again for incorporating me into this conversation. It's a privilege. It's an honor. It's always great to see you. My name is Colonel Johnny Casiano. I'm currently stationed at the Army War College at Carlisle Barracks, about halfway through the curriculum here. Former battalion commander at 177 Armor, and then most recently coming out of the 2nd SFAB. I was the 1st Battalion Commander over at 2nd SFAB at Fort Bragg. So great to be here. Looking forward to dialoguing about trust and all the different elements associated with it.
Okay. All right. So we're talking about trust. I've chosen Colonel Casiano to speak with me because of some shared experience we had when he was my battalion commander and I was a platoon sergeant in tank company there in Bravo Company 177. But when we talk about trust, I chose trust as a topic because it's a cornerstone of our leadership doctrine. It's a bedrock of our profession. But I feel like we need to do a little bit better about assessing for it, developing it when it's lacking, rewarding it, reinforcing it when it's present. And I think our imperative for it, or the reason it's essential, is that our biology a long time ago figured out that trust was essential. It was essential for us back in Paleolithic, Stone Age times when we were bands of 100, 150 people. And what happens in the brain when trust is reciprocated is oxytocin is released. Now, oxytocin is the exact same chemical neurotransmitter that is released when parents are holding their newborn for the first time. So that bond that forms between parents and newborn is not unlike individuals who have developed a trusting relationship where trust is extended and trust is in turn given back. And people are generally trustworthy. So it's something that I feel like it's absolutely important for us to cultivate in our environments and our organizations. I brought Colonel Casiano on because there were 2 incidents when I was a platoon sergeant in 177 Steel Tigers. The initial one was in Kuwait in 2016. It was our first time maneuvering as a platoon. And we had some problems right out the gate pertaining to the communications equipment we had and our ability to communicate with our tanks. And it was a unforced error, so to speak, on our part. But we persevered. We got through the mission, and my assessment leading into the AAR was that I'm just absolutely we're going to get nuked. We're going to get lit up. Everything that we had done was going to get omitted, and the focus was going to be on where we failed. And part of my reason for thinking that was that I had just left an organization where it was a no defect mentality form of leadership. You either get everything right or you get nothing right. So that kind of shaped my expectations, but my expectation was completely shattered when we conducted the AAR. You initially addressed it. You said, "Hey, got it. We can't have it. But this one's, I'm going to own this one, but you're going to not let it happen again. You're not going to repeat this mistake. We're going to learn from it." And instead you focused on the things we did well, the things we did right. And I think overall we did pretty good. So there was that incident where I was like, okay, the message that was communicated to me was that I could trust you to not be quote unquote a toxic leader. I know that has some various interpretations. People interpret that differently, but I'll use that just generally right now. And that you're going to focus on the bigger picture, and that as long as I put forth my best effort, controlled the big muscle movements and executed them properly, That's where the focus was going to be. It's not that we weren't going to be held accountable, because you made it very clear, hey, don't let this one happen again. Move forward and let's get better. So that's what it communicated to me, that I could trust you as a leader. And that was big. And then fast forward probably about 14 months. And this is when I got confirmation that you trusted me. You trusted my judgment, my competence, and what I brought to the team. And this was when we were maneuvering in Oro Grande maneuver area. Brand new platoon leader. I just swapped out. It was his first time maneuvering. His tank wound up in a place that it probably shouldn't have been. And we did a little track damage, and it was going to be a lot of man hours to fix it. And when you spoke to me that evening in the tactical alfalfa, you said, hey, tell me about this. Tell me about what happened. And then you kind of framed it in, because I'm thinking about conducting an investigation, to which obviously, or not, perhaps not obvious to everybody, but I would prefer not to have had an investigation opened on my platoon, not because of any wrongdoing, just because of the hassle. So I framed my response, I think, in a pretty succinct and impactful manner. And I said, sir, no one was harmed. Nobody got injured. We're going to be able to fix the tank at no cost to the government. So there was no property damage. And I said, matter of fact, sir, I think this is an excellent training opportunity for my platoon. I think they're going to get some training on track maintenance that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten. So let's look at it as a training opportunity. And you said, okay. And you dropped it right then and there. And for me, as a younger sergeant first class at the time, to change the mind of my battalion commander as briefly and as quickly as I did, it was absolutely I felt that hit of oxytocin. Maybe not at the time, but I got a little bit of a high off of it. I'm not going to lie. I was like, okay, I am trusted. Not only do I know I can trust my senior leader, but he trusts me as well. And it was absolutely a unique feeling. What's your perception of what's your memory of those events?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing both of those events up. And you were right. I think they were about 14 to 15 months apart from each other. And there's a lot embedded in those two examples, I think, right? But what I would offer up to you is that they are intimately linked, right? I saw from the very beginning that you were a valued asset to the organization, right? And you didn't just arrive there. I didn't just arrive there. And together we didn't just arrive at the fact that, we were valuable assets within the organization. But you don't develop trust right away. Right. It's impossible to do that. It's the hardest thing to earn, the hardest thing to yield amongst individuals and within an organization. And it's the absolute easiest thing to lose, in just a half a second of poor effort on anybody's part. So, those two events are linked. And the reason they're linked is because early on, you demonstrated to me that you were a professional, that you were highly competent, that you cared about the people within the organization. And, in turn, I gave the opportunity for trust to exist because I offered it, right? I mean, you and I were both new to the organization. And so, as leaders, we are in the position, particularly those more senior, to either offer up trust, where as individuals demonstrate, consistency in that trust and maintaining that trust, or the trust becomes eroded as a result of, really poor performance or untrustworthy actions on somebody's part. And so, as we progressed, 13, 14, 15 months later, when you communicated to me that, hey, sir, look, here's the situation that exists today with the tank, and within the organization, within the platoon, and you communicated to me, you maintained that professionalism, you maintained that level of competence and that level of caring. And I knew right then and there that what you were communicating to me was honest and trustworthy. And so I didn't feel a need to have to investigate as a result of the incident.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. those were such key moments in my time in 177 that you know, they remain fresh in my memory, and sometimes experiences draw me back to those. So thank you for sharing your perspective of it. So we laid out, you know, there's a biological imperative for us to evolve as people, as civilizations, as organizations. Trust is essential. There was some research done between high trust and low trust teams, and this is what author Paul Zak found. High trust teams, 74% less stress, 100%, 106% more energy at work, 50% higher productivity, 13% fewer illness and injury, 76% more engagement. And I see that word a lot, engaged leadership, being engaged at work. And I'd like to define that for the listeners. That is when I am engaged if I establish a clear connection to the work I do, the people I serve with, and my leadership. And I am more involved because of that solid connection. And then also 29% more satisfaction and 40% less burnout. So, you know, there's the biological imperative, there's the neuroscience of trust. I gave you some statistics on how high trust teams outperform low trust teams. You can absolutely have low trust teams succeed in the near term, but you're not going to see that growth. You're going to see that what is commonly referred to as toxic leadership. I also came across a good trust model, and this is for leaders. This is from authors Francis Frey and Ann Morris. For trust to be present in leadership, three things have to be in the equation, and that's authenticity. I experience the real you. Empathy. I believe you care about me and my success. And logic. Basically, your judgment and your reasoning are sound. That's a good model that I like to refer to. But I know you have your own models, some things you look for. Would you share with us what those models are, or what those components are, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an environment, isn't it? You
Mm-hmm.
know, the atmosphere that we cultivate as leaders, I think, first and foremost.
Yeah.
You know, going back to your examples originally, you know, creating an opportunity for people to learn from their mistakes is a place where you can build trust very quickly. And you know, I'll offer this to you. If you are confident as a leader, then you should look to push the decision making authority down to the level where the information lies. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, if you do that, you are now demonstrating to that organization that you trust those leaders to make decisions that are pretty darn critical for the success of that organization, right? And so as mistakes are made, we as leaders have to be able to underwrite those mistakes so that those lessons can be learned, right? And the more people learn from their mistakes, the better they are to be able to teach from those experiences. They get to pass on that development and cultivation of an atmosphere and a culture within an organization, an environment that everybody really values being a part of and operating within, right? So I like your idea, or the author's ideas of authenticity and empathy and logic. You know, and I'll quickly touch on those, but offer up some of the things that I look for as well. Authenticity, in my mind, is, you know, and you've probably heard me say this before. If you want to be a good leader, darn it, you better be a good person first, right?
Absolutely.
That's authenticity, right? It's rooted within the person we are as leaders, right? The empathy idea, right? We all come from varying backgrounds. We're a highly diversified organization, the United States Army. We have different upbringings. And the day that we can't imagine ourselves walking in the shoes of somebody who doesn't look like us, somebody who doesn't speak like us or act like us or worship like us, um, you know, that's the day when we're going to fail the people we're charged with leading. That is the day that we're going to sow the seeds of eroding trust within that organization, which, you know, is going to be very difficult to get back. And so empathy is this ability to identify with a whole host of other people who we are very unfamiliar with, and from the position or perspective that they are seeing different things. The logic, I'll tell you, that essentially that's your brain. That's the black and white of a situation. But I would offer up that what needs to complement that is, the heart and emotion. And so, the emotion is the gray area that really fills in the black and white logical decision making process. And so, those three things are very important. I like the triangle. The things that I look at in particular to build trust and really cultivate that culture within an organization is openness or transparency,
Yeah.
consistency, and fairness. And it's important to understand the definitions of those words, right? Because everybody is going to have a different idea of what those words mean, and there's a Webster's dictionary definition for each of them.
Yeah.
Right. But people people will see those words very differently from very different perspectives, and the only way to get everybody on the exact same sheet of music is through communication. And it's not communication at a threshold level. It's not just going down to, say, the platoon leader and the platoon sergeant. It's everybody across the organization. And so, those three things, I I I look for those three things, and I expect the leaders within the organization I'm in to demonstrate those three things.
Okay, absolutely. So when you're talking about transparency, um, and I think what needs to be included in part of that, and I think this is a very hard concept for a lot of younger leaders to learn, and that's selective vulnerability. And what I mean by that is, and there's research that substantiates this, that leaders that make themselves vulnerable at an appropriate level connect better with their subordinates. It's that leader that tries to hide what he or she does or doesn't know in an effort to prevent exposing weakness. And this also ties into authenticity. It absolutely has an impact. And I think I made this mistake when I was a young E5. There was a great deal of things that I knew I didn't know. And I spent a lot of emotional energy trying to make sure that those around me didn't know what I didn't know. And I think I would have been much better served by basically when things came up, I just said, I don't have the answer for that either. Let's find it together. Or I don't know what the right solution is. Let's work through it as a team. And I think that would have absolutely impacted the levels of trust within my small team. Now that I'm a little bit older, a little bit more confident in myself, I absolutely have no problem stating if somebody asks me something that I can't answer with any kind of accuracy, I'm going to tell you I don't know. But I think when we're newer at this leadership game or this leadership calling, I think there's absolutely a motivation to try and be less than transparent and not be vulnerable at all. Now, too much vulnerability, research shows people begin to question why you're the leader to begin with. But how do you think we can be appropriately vulnerable as leaders?
Yeah, that's a really great question. It in my mind, it's tied to authenticity, and I think you mentioned that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability allows people to make instant connections.
Yeah.
And making instant connections is important within an organization as large and diverse as the ones that you and I serve within. This idea of vulnerability is important because it demonstrates to people that not everybody has all of the answers. And if you can create the buy-in necessary for other people to have an investment in solving a problem or creating greatness within an organization, then you're moving in a direction that it becomes we and not me, right? And so vulnerability allows for that to exist because there are plenty of people willing and capable to provide answers and solutions to problem sets that are, complex.
Yeah.
And so the vulnerability really is a platform for those individuals to share experiences and ideas to find solutions.
Okay, absolutely. I agree 100%. So we talked about empathy, and you mentioned the diversity of our organizations, and they're absolutely much more representative of the nation we serve than probably any other enterprise in America. And I love it for that. And one of the phrases we like to say as EOAs is diversity is meaningless without inclusivity, without being inclusive, without an inclusive organization. And how we arrive at inclusivity is in part due to empathy. And I would like to share with you briefly another tale of demonstrated empathy that I saw in 177. And this actually came from the Sergeant Major. We had a young man that, because of some of the choices he made, we were going to have to separate this individual. And I had to, at the time I was serving as the first sergeant for BCO, and I had to bring him over for his first reading of his Article 15. And I wasn't being vulnerable. I was being very guarded. At the time, I wasn't giving the soldier a read on what to expect, because my expectation was that it wasn't going to be good. He was going to get, the first Sergeant Major was going to call for fire on him, so to speak, in the office. But what happened was absolutely the complete opposite. Sergeant Major extended a level of empathy that I was not expecting, and that I'd never really seen in person from a senior organizational leader. What Sergeant Major communicated was, hey, you made this decision, and this is going to be the effects of the decision, but you're still a member of this organization. You're still a soldier. You're still entitled to dignity and respect. And as long as you continue to carry yourself as what is expected of a member of this organization, you're not going to be treated any less than. Okay. And that was huge. Sergeant Major had a sense. He knew this soldier was going to fall because of his decisions, his life impacting decisions, but he made a conscious decision to not make it harder, or not push him on his way down. He kind of softened the landing, so to speak. And that was another pivot in my leadership style that I didn't understand, or I didn't quite have a concept of how advanced empathy could be applied that skillfully. And he did a great job. I don't know if you remember that situation, or if you can comment on it.
Yeah, I do recall the situation, and what I would offer is that's the sophistication of a highly intelligent leader. That is emotional intelligence at work to the greatest extent. And I'd follow it by saying that we as human beings all make mistakes, right? Bad things are going to happen, and those it is determined that how we handle those situations will demonstrate to others on the backside a level of success, a level of failure, and how to move on from there. So it builds an experience that people get to go back to ensure that they don't find themselves in that situation again. And the Sergeant Major not making that situation any more difficult for that young man speaks to a sophistication in leadership and a high degree of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what he was communicating, not directly, but it was implicit, was that you can trust us, even though we have to take these measures essentially against you because of your actions. You can still trust us in that we have your best interest in mind. We're balancing your best interest, your personal welfare, with the needs of the organization. And the needs of the organization communicated: the soldier made a one-time mistake, but he could no longer continue to serve with us. But at the same time, we were still going to treat him like a human being and positively shape his perception of the whole process. Like, that soldier could still be a recruiter for the Army today. in that when they say, how was your time in the Army? He could say, well, I got in a little bit of trouble and I got chaptered out, but they didn't kick me in the butt on the way out the door. They held the door open for me, thanked me for my service, and treated me like a human being. That empathy is absolutely crucial. So we talked about authenticity, logic, and empathy. That's the Frey Morris model. Your model, consistency, transparency, fairness, all that helps us arrive at trust. And even the models we've talked about or we've offered today aren't comprehensive models. There's still more out there and more we could discuss. I feel like we've covered a great deal. But if you could leave a young company commander or a young lieutenant with some sort of mentorship on actions they could take if they find that trust is lacking in their organization, what do you think you would offer up?
Yeah, hey, that's a really great question. Great points to make with regard to that. So, first and foremost, right? If you're speaking, if you find yourself being the only person doing all of the talking, seeing an apprehension of younger, less experienced, more junior individuals within the organization to actually speak their mind, then you have a trust problem, and it should be
Absolutely.
addressed immediately. And the way to go about doing this is being very, very open about it, right? You spoke about engaged leadership. Informal touch points are the best way to arrive at a sense for what's really going on in your organization. And it really develops a platform for you as a leader to be able to reach out and touch people to gain a sense for what's happening, what's going on, and how to fix it if a fix is necessary. I think you and I have talked about this before, and you've probably heard me say, if we don't know about what's going on, there's no way we can possibly fix it. Well, if we don't actively try to figure out what's going on, then we're not going to know what's going on. And so if you have informal touch points with every cohort of your organization, you're going to arrive at consensus. You're going to arrive at a pretty detailed understanding of what is really going on within your organization. And you'll be surprised to find out that the more you demonstrate that vulnerability and the more you create the buy-in for people wanting to be participatory in the solution, the more ideas you will receive from people to bring the organization further towards greatness.
Yeah. Okay, that's absolutely correct. So basically, to put that in an example, the leader that can take bad news, okay, absolutely, we want that. You've got to have a culture that your subordinates can bring you bad news and deliver, because everybody can tell the boss the good news. Everybody's usually knocking over chairs to bring the boss the good news, but nobody wants to be the one to take the bad news to the boss. I would say an excellent indicator of what you just said is if PFC McEvers could come up to Colonel Casiano, in just an informal conversation, when you say, "Hey, how's it going?" Be like, "Sir, actually not very well. We're struggling, with whatever problem, be it maintenance or time allocation for training." That's a trusting organization, and I don't think anybody could dispute it, because the courage it would take for a PFC just to speak to a field grade officer or a senior leader outside of "Good morning, sir," "Good morning, sergeant," "Sergeant Major," that takes an incredible amount of courage. And that soldier has to have reassurances that it's not going to have negative implications for me, that I just leveled with the boss. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's a perfect example to close on, sir. Be that leader where the PFC or the PV2 that knows what they're talking about, they can be the one to give you bad news when they talk to you, because we all say the same thing. "How's it going, sir?" "Oh, it's great. Everything's good." When in reality, we don't have that trust level present where we can level with the boss. So anyway, I want to wrap it up here, sir, for time purposes. I thank you so much. I think you exceeded every expectation that I had for this conversation. I'm glad you were a part of it.
Sergeant McEvers, thank you so much. This again, honor, a privilege. Just being able to see you again and have a dialogue with you about something so important is it's the highlight of my day. And great seeing you again, and looking forward to seeing this coming out on the other side.
Yeah, you too. Steel Tiger, sir. Strike hard, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, brother.
Thanks.
Thanks.